Chapter 2. The Trials of Amaranth.
Come on, Ari! You gotta open your eyes. You can do it. We prepared for this. Let's go. I'm hungry.
Auric slowly opened his eyes to see the blurry silhouette of Trey reaching out to support him. Brock and Tara, who along with Trey were some of Auric's oldest friends, stood on the other side of the canyon. An obstacle course of small pillars and platforms came together to form his only path to the other side.
Hungry?
Tara yelled from across the canyon. Trey looked up at her, confused.
What? It works for me.
Auric was frozen again. The trials were an important part of every young dinosaur's life, no matter what family they were from, but the Amaranthine trials were some of the hardest in all the land.
1 minute!
The quiet countdown came from a large armoured ankylosaurus at a volume that only those standing next to him could have heard. General Tyne, the well-respected commander of the Amaranthine army, stood across the canyon, his eyes fixed on a sundial in his palm. Standing beside him, Thorn, Auric's father and leader of the Amaranthine people, watched with the expressionless stare he wore when he didn't want to show onlookers the slightest hint of the worry and concern that was churning inside of him. Normally, neither of the two would be bothered to personally oversee the trials, but this was no normal test. This was the third attempt of Thorn's son, and expectations were high. A fact that Auric was so painfully aware of, it seemed to infinitely compound the pressure of the moment. Beside them, standing within earshot, were Tara and Brock, who along with Trey, the young Triceratops, had been preparing for the trials alongside Auric for months.
You're running out of time!
Tara yelled frantically from across the cavern.
Ari! Are you coming?
Trey asked, looking more uneasy the longer he waited. Auric did not respond. He couldn't even hear his friends cheering him on through the cacophony of vertigo and expectations that occupied his thoughts on the edge of the canyon. Okay, Auric breathed to himself. As he stepped up to the ledge, there was nothing that he wanted more than to step out on the pillars that formed the path across the canyon and show everyone that he was ready.
I can do this, he thought.
It felt like it took all his might to lift his first foot off the ground. But it was moving. He was doing it. Any second now, his weight would push him forward towards the pillar and momentum would carry him the rest of the way.
Here we go. Time!
The general's shout seemed to knock the wind out of him, pulling Auric out of his trance mid-step. He looked up at General Tyne, realized he was too late, and in a panic tried to stop himself from jumping onto the first pillar. The one place you did not want to be while leaping from a ledge of death is stuck in between stopping and starting, and not knowing which one you're actually doing. Auric stumbled.
Ah!
He yelled as his hesitation between stopping and starting pulled him in one direction, down.
That's it. I'm dead, he thought. Here's where I fall to my doom.
Auric closed his eyes, still screaming, convinced this was the end. But he never hit the water.
Surely the fall wasn't this far, he thought.
Slowly, he opened one eye to find he was still on the ledge, with Trey holding the back of his shirt. General Tyne, Thorn, and the rest of the onlookers silently watched with a mix of expressions that ranged from concern to disappointment or a biting of their lower lip that could only be interpreted as a desperate attempt to stifle an outburst of laughter. With a jolt, Trey quickly pulled Auric back onto the relative safety of the ledge.
"No,"
Auric muttered to himself.
It's all right, Auri,"
Trey interrupted.
"You still have time. You almost made it. And there's still a lot to be excited about, with the festival and all."
Trey meant well, but the mention of the Golden Light Festival only fueled Auric's disappointment. Part of the festival every year was the ceremony celebrating those who passed the trials. He had 1 day left, that was it, or all his friends would be moving on without him. Seeing all the colour drain from Auric's face, Trey looked around frantically for support. Luckily, Tara was just arriving, wearing a well-rehearsed smile and doing her best to not sound fazed in the least by what had just happened.
"Well done, Auri. You were one obstacle away. All right, if we start now, we can still get some time in on the beams before dark. I say we..." "No, Tara," Auric interrupted. "I can't do pillar training anymore. We've been running it for months."
"But," Tara tried to interject.
"I just need to clear my head," Auric continued. "I'll see you guys later."
"Are you still coming to watch them feed the Microraptors tonight?" Trey asked, desperately trying to cheer up his friend. "It's our last chance to see which looks the fastest before the big race tomorrow."
"Yeah, sure. I think so,"
Auric said, already turning away to head down the mountain into town.
"Don't wait for me. I'll meet you guys there."
Realizing the Microraptor races were not enough to cheer up his friend, Trey started to say something, determined to convince Auric to stay, but a hand on his arm from Tara stopped him before he could form the words. Feeling incapable of helping their friend, they watched as he disappeared down the hill, heading towards town. In stark contrast to the way Auric was feeling, the village of Amaranth was absolutely buzzing. It was the night before the Golden Light Festival, by far the biggest day of the year for the Amaranthine people who had been preparing for weeks, and as a result, the level of excitement and anticipation was at its absolute peak. Although they celebrated a festival of light every year in honor of the legend of the Golden Rex, the Golden Light Festival only happened every 18 years, when the festival and the lunar cycle aligned on the night of a full lunar eclipse. The Golden Light Festival was a time-honored tradition that had been part of every fam's life for as long as anyone could remember. From the Blue Water family of the western shores of Gilshade to the Black Glass family of Ashfall near the base of Moving Mountain, every community was preparing to celebrate the legend of Kittrick, the Golden Rex, and 1,000 years of peace in the land of Emberlow. Auric, on the other hand, could only think about the knot in his stomach. It served as a constant reminder that he only had very few hours left to pass the trials before the festival.
"What if I can't do it?" he thought. "Maybe I'm just not good enough. No matter what I do, I'm never going to be."
"Auri!" a shop owner called over, startling him out of the haze of his spinning thoughts.
"Oh, hey, Carl,"
Auric replied. "Sorry, didn't mean to startle you there. You look like someone stole your dinner, kid. What's got your tail in the mud?" Cal asked, leaning over the counter and resting his chin on one hand like he was settling in for an epic tale.
"Oh, nothing," Auric stumbled. "Just, walking home."
Cal was not fooled. All right. Well, you know what makes me feel better when my tail's dragging in the mud? You could use an espresso."
"A what?"
Auric asked, puzzled. "You know, that new bean juice everybody's talking about."
"Bean juice?"
"Yeah."
"Oh, yeah. No, thanks. My mom says I'm too young."
"Ah, well, she's probably right. I know. How about a cookie for the road? It'll cure what ails you, I tell you. On the house."
"Yeah, okay. What's in it?"
"What's in it? Well,
Meat, of course. Unable to resist, Auric snatched up the cookie and continued on his way. Thanks, Carl. Any time, kid. As Auric walked home, the momentary joy of his snack wore off quickly. His mind was running a continuous loop of memories, worries, and possible future outcomes all at once. Waves of shame washed over him as his failure on the course replayed in his mind, his anxiety only growing as he imagined his next attempt failing, and what his father might say, what his friends might think, and on and on. He had no recollection of the walk home as he arrived at his door, but he must have pondered for a while, because the warm glow of dusk had faded as the darkness of night set in. His grandmother, sitting in her usual spot cleaning sticky beans, said something, but he didn't hear it. Auric walked inside, slipped past his mother and father, who paused their conversation in the kitchen when they heard him come in, and went straight to bed, having had enough of this day altogether. The next morning he woke up to find that the ongoing loop of worries was still playing in his mind. All he could do was make his way to the training grounds early and hope he had enough time to get through the course before the festival. By the time his friends arrived, he had already completed the warm-up training he had been taught, run through the practice course, and done everything he could to psych himself for the test.
Wow, you're here early,
Brock said. Auric sat silently staring off into the distance, lost in thought once again.
Auri,
Tara said.
I spoke with General Tyne, and he recommended I run support at the pillars for your trial today.
Auric looked up, worried.
I know you've depended on Trey to be there for you if you fell, but I'm sure I can support you if need be. The General thought that not having your usual safety net there might force you to push through that part of the course. Sorry, is he trying to get me killed? Auric exclaimed.
You can do this, Auri, Trey said patiently. Brock and I will be waiting for you on the other side.
You've passed all but one obstacle, Tara continued, and you know what you need to do. Don't hesitate. Just do what you do in practice and you'll be fine.
Hopefully, Brock huffed sarcastically. That remark earned Brock a glare from Tara before she turned back to Auric and said with her normal rehearsed enthusiasm,
All right, well, it's better to confront our fears than to use up all our energy worrying about them. You ready, Auri?
With a nod, Auric stood up and made his way to the course. Auric was determined, but as he made his way through the course, he could not shake the feeling that this attempt would be no different from his previous efforts. He had memorized the timing of the obstacles leading up to the pillars at the end of the course, so much so that as he went through them, his body seemed to move all on its own, while his mind replayed the challenge of the pillars over and over. As he approached the cliffside, he saw Tara waiting for him. On the far side of the cliff again stood his friends, General Tyne and his father. The sight of them brought a rush of panic coursing through his body. His mind began to race with the fear of letting his parents, his friends, his village down again. Auric closed his eyes, trying to silence the involuntary chorus of doubt and imagined outcomes were he to fail. Seeing Auric start to freeze, Tara offered her usual encouragement.
Okay, Auri, let me know when you're ready. Remember, we just have to take it one pillar at a time.
Before she could even finish her sentence, Auric sprinted towards the ledge. The movement startled Tara as Auric blazed past. He didn't just jump to the pillar. Auric leapt as if he were escaping the most unimaginable terror nipping at his heels. Wait, Tara mouthed, though no sound was able to escape her beak before Auric launched himself off the cliff face and was sailing through the air towards the first pillar. It was while in mid-air that Auric realized what
Tara and everyone else knew the moment he took off from the ledge. It was too much. He was going to hit the pillar with too much momentum if he didn't miss it altogether. His first foot landed hard. He tried to dig his claws into the thin layer of moss and soil that topped the pillar, but as his claws hit the stone underneath, he felt the soil give way and slide towards the edge. The onlookers watched helplessly from either side of the course as Auric went over the ledge.
No!
Thorn breathed as he watched his son slip out of sight between the pillars.
Auri!
Tara screamed, running to the edge to try to get a clear line of sight to where he had fallen. As she reached the point on the cliff where she could see around the pillar, a loud crack startled her, and she saw a faint ripple of distorted light shoot out from behind the pillar. The stone? Did it snap? Her mind raced. She peered down at the water, but there was no sign of Auric. Where is he? She thought. Just then, cheering shook her out of her stupor. Cheering? Why would anyone be cheering? She looked toward the sound coming from the other side of the canyon. There, between her and the cheering onlookers, was Auric, climbing onto the top of the far pillar near the end of the course. How? Would have been what Tara would have said if she was able to form even the simplest of words. But instead she just stood there, mouth open, staring at her friend. Auric glanced back at Tara. When their eyes met, it seemed to snap Tara out of her daze, and she managed a slight grin. Tara watched, stunned silent, still not sure what had happened, as Auric made the last, much simpler leap to the far side of the cliff, where Trey and Brock met him with open arms. They embraced him, celebrating and chanting something she couldn't quite make out. That evening, the people of Amaranth all gathered for the Golden Light Festival. They laughed and ate and danced into the night like they'd been saving their joy all year for this moment. Children ran through the streets, reenacting the legends of the Golden Rex. Older townsfolk watched the ceremonies and cheered for the games. After the award ceremony, the four friends met up to head to the raptor races. For years it had been their favourite part of the festival, and it had become somewhat of a tradition for the friends to pick their favourites, cheer them on, and see whose raptor would claim the championship. Trey had picked the winner the last 2 years in a row, claiming his title as champion amongst his friends, a title he reminded them of often enough that Brock had spent extra time scouting the raptors this year in an effort to end 2 years of Trey's continuous gloating.
Who's ready for the big race?
Trey proclaimed ecstatically, wearing last year's champion's crown made of raptor feathers that he had fashioned himself, mostly for Brock's torment. Auric smiled back at Trey, quietly enjoying his playful goading of Brock.
I think I'm going to watch from up on the hill, Trey. I don't think I can deal with the crowd tonight,
Auric hesitantly admitted.
And it's our first Golden Light Festival. I want to have a good view for the firelight show.
What? Trey gasped.
But watching me win the races is our favourite part of the festival. And this year, watching me win that silly crown is going to be even better, Brock added. I know, Auric said with an amused smile. I'll be watching from on the hill, and we'll be here to claim my crown after number 3 leaves your mollusks in the dust.
Mollusks? Trey and Brock responded in shocked unison.
I'll go with you, Auri, Tara said. I've heard the fireworks are beautiful from up there. We'll meet you boys here after the race so we can properly crown the new...
Trey huffed.
Or returning champion, Tara said with a smile. You guys should come with us, Auric said.
And miss this dirt? The feathers? The action? Trey replied, aghast, shocked it needed to be said out loud at all.
No, we'll meet you here after the race so I can claim my new crown,
grabbing Brock and turning suddenly to head towards the arena.
There is no crown,
Tara said, puzzled.
There is.
Trey exclaimed over one shoulder.
I've already made it.
Once Tara and Auric made their way up the hill to the lookout point, they sat silently for a moment, taking in the view. From atop the hill, the village of Amaranth glowed with life. With every lantern lit and walkway full, it appeared to be alive and pulsing to a heartbeat that was all its own, independent of the individual lives of the dinos that called it home. They watched as the firelights lit up the canopy below, seeing for the first time how the light spread from one end of the valley to the other with each explosion of colour. Auric had been watching for some time before he noticed Tara looking at him. When he turned his head, Tara, realizing she'd been caught staring, quickly turned hers as well back towards the view.
What?
Auric said, half laughing at his friend. Tara looked back at him, and when he saw that she was not smiling, in return, Auric's smile faded.
What happened at the trial today?
Tara said, with a little more directness than she had intended.
What do you mean?
Auric replied.
Trey and Brock said they thought you pushed off as you fell and leapt to the second pillar, but I saw you. There was no leap. I saw you fall. And then...
At that, Tara trailed off, not sure what she had seen, let alone how to say it. The brief moment of silence felt like it lasted an eternity. Auric dropped his head.
I don't know. What do you mean you don't know?
Tara asked impatiently, aware that her fear and concern was coming out as frustration, but unable to hold it back.
I mean, I don't know. The pillars terrify me, Tara, you know that. I just jumped, and when I realized I wasn't going to be able to stop...
Auric shook his head. Tara looked at him with concern, waiting for him to break the silence.
I don't know what happened. I must have blacked out. I probably pushed off in a panic when you didn't,
Tara interrupted.
I must have,
Auric said softly, more to reassure himself than Tara. Tara, never taking her eyes off her friend, thought for a moment.
Okay,
she said as she put one reassuring hand on Auric's shoulder and looked back out towards the finale of the celebration that led up to the eclipse.
They really went all out this year,
Auric said finally.
Yeah,
Tara agreed.
What are those?
Auric said with amazement. Tara sat watching the vibrant blue lights pulse and begin to change colour.
I don't know. But they're